In the final days of April 1945, beneath the ruins of Berlin, the last chapter of the Third Reich unfolded within the concrete confines of the Führerbunker. As Soviet forces tightened their grip on the city, the world above was a cacophony of battle, but 55 feet underground, a different kind of reality had taken hold. This is the story of those last 10 days, a period of delusion, collapse, and the final, symbolic end of a regime that had plunged the world into war. By April 20th, Hitler's 56th birthday, the sound of Soviet artillery could be heard clearly in the Reich Chancellery Garden. The city was almost completely encircled. That day, Hitler emerged from the bunker for one of the last times. In a staged ceremony, he met a group of Hitler Youth boys, awarding them medals for their feudal bravery. It was a surreal piece of propaganda, a desperate attempt to project an image of control that no longer existed. Back in the bunker, the atmosphere was a toxic mix of fear, exhaustion, and unwavering, fanatical loyalty from some, while others began to see the futility of their situation. The Führerbunker was a self-contained, subterranean world. It consisted of two main levels, the Vorbunker, or upper bunker, and the lower Führerbunker, where Hitler and his inner circle resided. Life here was disconnected from the apocalyptic battle raging just meters above. The ventilation systems hummed constantly, circulating stale air. Days and nights blurred into one, marked only by the increasingly frantic military conferences. These meetings became exercises in fantasy. Hitler, hunched over maps, moved divisions that existed only on paper, ordering counterattacks by armies that had already been decimated or had ceased to exist. His generals, trapped between their duty and the undeniable reality of defeat, often played along, unable or unwilling to confront him with the full truth. The disconnect between the strategic planning in the bunker and the reality on the streets was absolute. On April 22nd, a critical turning point occurred. During a military conference, Hitler was informed that a planned counterattack by SS General Felix Steiner's army detachment had never materialized. Steiner's forces were simply insufficient to carry out the order. This news triggered a complete breakdown. For the first time, Hitler openly admitted that the war was lost. He flew into a rage, denouncing the treachery and incompetence of his commanders. He declared he would stay in Berlin to the end and would not flee. This announcement sent shockwaves through the bunker's staff. It was a clear signal that the end was not just near, but that it would happen here, under the ground. Following this outburst, a sense of organized chaos took over. Hitler authorized many of his staff to attempt to break out of Berlin and head west. Some, like his personal physician Dr. Morell, left immediately. Others chose to stay. The bunker population began to thin, leaving only the most devoted, the most trapped, and Hitler himself. The command structure of the Third Reich was disintegrating in real time. Communications with the outside world became sporadic and unreliable. For years, Hitler's word had been absolute law across a continent. Now, his orders barely reached the city limits. Amid this collapse, Hermann Göring, the head of the Luftwaffe and Hitler's designated successor, sent a telegram from Berchtesgaden. Citing a 1941 decree, Göring cautiously inquired if he should assume leadership of the Reich, given that Hitler was now cut off in Berlin. Hitler, prodded by his rival Martin Bormann, interpreted this as an act of high treason. He exploded with fury, stripping Göring of all his titles and ordering his arrest. A day later, a similar fate befell Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, who had been secretly attempting to negotiate a partial surrender with the Western Allies through a Swedish diplomat. When Hitler learned of this betrayal through a BBC broadcast, his worldview of loyalty completely shattered. The two men he had trusted most had, in his eyes, abandoned him. This feeling of betrayal would dominate his final hours, shaping his last political acts. As the physical world of the Third Reich shrank to the perimeter of the Führerbunker, Hitler turned his attention to personal and political legacies. In the early hours of April 29th, a small, surreal ceremony took place. He married his long-term companion, Eva Braun, in a brief civil service within the bunker's map room. A minor municipal councillor was brought in from the front lines to officiate. Eva Braun had arrived in the bunker in mid-April, against Hitler's wishes, choosing to share his fate. Her presence provided a strange, domestic counterpoint to the military and political disintegration. A brief wedding reception followed. with champagne and morbid conversation about the end. Immediately after the wedding, Hitler summoned his private secretary, Trottel Junge. Over the next few hours, he dictated his final political testament and a personal will. The political testament was not a document of remorse or reflection. Instead, it was a final, defiant restatement of his core beliefs. He blamed international forces for the war and absolved himself and the German people of guilt. He expelled Göring and Himmler from the party and appointed Grand Admiral Karl Donitz as his successor as president of the Reich and Joseph Goebbels as chancellor. His personal will was more mundane, dealing with his personal possessions and thanking his loyal companions. These documents were the final acts of a leader attempting to script the end of his own story, to control the narrative even as his power evaporated completely. By April 30th, Soviet troops were just a few hundred meters from the Reich Chancellery. The sounds of battle were now a constant, deafening roar that vibrated through the concrete walls of the bunker. The end was imminent. Hitler had a final lunch and then proceeded to say his farewells to the remaining members of his staff and inner circle. This included the Goebbels family, Martin Bormann, the secretaries, and various military adjutants. The atmosphere was somber and filled with a heavy, unspoken finality. The man who had once commanded millions and held the fate of a continent in his hands was now confined to a few underground rooms, his empire reduced to rubble. The events that took place in the Führerbunker in those last days of April 1945 represent more than just the end of a single leader. They symbolize the complete and utter collapse of an entire ideology. The bunker became a microcosm of the regime itself, built on grand, delusional plans, disconnected from reality, and ultimately consumed by its own destructive nature. The final hours were not a dramatic last stand, but a quiet, grim conclusion in a subterranean tomb, while a world war reached its devastating climax overhead. The story of the bunker is a stark and necessary lesson in how power, when corrupted by fanaticism, inevitably leads to its own self-destruction, leaving only ruins and a legacy of profound tragedy. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, please consider subscribing for more historical content.